Hello and welcome back to the Java playlist. So in this video, we're going to be going over something called a method. Now, methods are very important to Java. It's a big part of all coding languages. Some languages may call them functions. But what methods are they're blocks of code. They're kind of broken down pieces of code that that execute a specific function that the main, let's say, thread of that program is calling. So you can break up these functions or methods into different parts. And when you're building the program to come all together to create a full application, you can refer back to these things that create like their own, they have their own process of creating uh, or own blocks of code that execute and then pass it back to, in this case, the main method. So again, just to kind of define it, it's used to like break a complex program into a small, more manageable program. So like there's two types of methods. Two types that we're going to be covering right now. It is a void method. So a void method just executes a group of statements and then it exits or terminates, and then a value returning method, which it returns a value to the statement that calls it. So we'll start with the void method in this video. It's pretty simple to understand. So is the return value one. But for this, we'll just kind of go through a couple examples of how you can return a void method and start out as to what a method is. So we already have seen a method, and that's with our main method. So inside our class or objects or whatever, we have a main method, and this is used to basically uh, show that this is a starting point of the Java application, and we're going to be starting here, and we're going to execute from this. I'm not sure if I explained system exit. It's just something that you're adding to the end of the code. So once it's done, it returns uh, a status code. So in this case, 0. And conventionally in languages like Java and like C, or if you have a 0 status at the end of executing your code, it means that it's run successfully. A non-zero could mean something's wrong. And so the first thing we'll do is we'll start out simple with methods because they can get very complicated, and that's kind of what we're using methods for, is to make complicated tasks sort of broken down into more simpler little snippets of code. And then when you're building your project, you can kind of pick and choose the methods that you need at the time and only write like little little statements instead of writing out whole blocks of code. So if you need to use a method like more than once throughout your code, you don't have to type that whole block of code anymore. You can just call this method. So system print line. Hey, we are in the main method. And then, so this is where we are going to create a new method. So down here, I've commented in a section that we can um, start a new method. And what we're doing is we're going to declare a method. And it's like you see with your main method. You have things called method modifiers, which are the public and static, and that just uh, tells the rest of the code. So if it's public, that yes, you can access this. Static, meaning that it changes or it doesn't. But we're not gonna. I guess we could use static. Public static void. So void is the return type. So it's just executing a bunch of code in here, and this program is not expecting it to return anything to when it's being called. We're we're just executing and then terminating, and then we can uh, name the. So this is the method name, and then we give it parentheses, and like in our main method, we have parentheses, and it can take in arguments. In methods, as we continue, we'll see that we can pass arguments in from different methods, and use those arguments inside the calculations or the code execution that we need to inside another method. And it's when sort of the the code kind of becomes more networked together with every other method, and you can start making uh, complex applications that aren't just printing stuff out to a screen or adding a couple of digits. So in this, we'll just have system dot out dot print line, and we'll say, hey, I'm in the new method. And that's basically all we need just to show this for now. But the important thing is so we've created this method. Now we have to call it. And this is what makes it a lot easier than just typing out this. So for this, we can have multiple print line, send me back to the main. And then here we can have system.out.println, you're back in the main. So as you see, we have two print lines here. With the method, all we just need to do is type in new message, and we're calling that. So we're calling this, and you can see over here on your outline, it'll give you a list of your method. And before, we haven't really been paying attention to sort of these like toolbars and explorers and all that sort of stuff. But you can see now here that it is giving you kind of like an outline of what your methods are. So you have a static new message with a void output. And as we start adding more and more methods, you'll see that it ends up uh, showing like the return type and all that sort of stuff. So we'll just start by printing this out. So if you look at the output, we start with the system, this print line, hey, I'm in the main method, and then it calls this method, prints out these two, and then it comes back and executes as it does normally, and then it says you're back in the main. So we see that we can now break stuff down, and we can now have another, say, method, newer message, and you can see now that we can start kind of embedding even more methods into other methods, and this is where your code again gets complex, more linked, and then system.out.print line. We have gone deeper. So now we're executing this, it's calling this method. This method is executing this, is calling this method. See, we have a new method over here. We run it. Oh shit, what the hell did I do? Hey, I'm in the new method. Oh, I'm recursively calling it. So that's a free lesson on recursion. So we've called the same method within the method. So we forgot to. Okay, so we've entered this, called this method. This method has printed this. Now it's calling this method, and you can keep going like this. We're just showing how stuff sort of like the linkability kind of increases, and now you can sort of make blocks of code and reuse them wherever you want in your classes. So that is, and you can also use methods from other classes by importing them. That's kind of what we've been doing with like the scanner class and using the method like read line, like all that sort of stuff. So yeah, that's just a quick first look at that. I'll make this a tiny bit more complex since we have a bit more time, and I'll add a for loop here. You can now less than equal to 10 I plus plus. I think I'm doing it in another language, the for loop. Yes, I am. So now this is going to call it 10 times, and sweet. So yeah, you can see that it's calling this method 10 times. So it's going, hey, I'm in a new method. We have gone deeper. Hey, I'm in the new method. Oh, send me back to the main. Hey, so these three lines execute 10 times, and then it forces back out and says you're in the main. So yeah, that's just showing you how methods work as a primer, and we'll get further into it. But thanks for watching the video, and yeah, see you in the next one.